Hi everybody! Today we are going to create some flat portraits, very flat portraits. The concept behind this exercise is to reinforce the idea that the most important element in portraiture is not likeness or even the presence of facial features. If you are not used to drawing, if you are not used to painting, or if you feel unsure about representing human faces, you simply don't have to. What matters more than representing facial features is representing expression, human expression. In portraiture, it's the emotion that gives the work meaning. You can have a portrait with all the accurate facial features, a beautifully rendered nose, perfectly distinct eyes, all in place, but if there's no expression, it will still look lifeless, and it may be beautiful and technically flawless, but without emotion, it will also be forgettable. So the challenge we're setting for ourselves today is this. How can we evoke emotion even if you choose not to include any facial features at all? There is something very intriguing about this style. It carries a certain mystery. When done well, it draws the viewer in. It makes you curious about what's not visible. You see, it's easy to look at a portrait where everything is already there. Nothing is hidden, nothing's left to the imagination, and that's it. But in minimalism, you find yourself wondering, what is this? What am I not seeing? And that curiosity adds a richness that comes from simplicity. Many artists have taken this path, the path of simplification. Even those with classical training like Picasso, Van Gogh, and Modigliani. And as I've mentioned in a previous video, they realized that expression speaks louder than realism. Of course, artists like Picasso and Modigliani would have been great traditional painters too, I assume, but what truly sets their work apart is how they moved away from reality and created their own version of it. I'm telling you this to show you that even artists with a solid academic foundation often choose to use their training simply as a base, not as a cage. Many beginners feel intimidated by portraiture because they often think that it's all about achieving likeness. But once again, likeness is not the goal, expression is. What matters is how well does your portrait, regardless of the style you choose, capture the essence of the subject. In the 5 examples that I'm sharing here, I'm painting entirely from imagination, so there's no one to compare them to. But you can absolutely use photographs as a starting point. Then try simplifying them down to their bare minimum. Challenge yourself to work with less, and you'll see that even when reduced to the essentials, you can still capture character, you can still reflect personality, and most importantly, you can still show humanity. And you'll see this in this portrait I am painting, this little girl here. Even though there are virtually no facial features, just a suggestion of shadow and a single eyebrow, you can still tell it's a young girl, and you can still feel a sense of sadness, perhaps a feeling of being lost. And all that comes through without having any actual face to look at. That's why I am encouraging you to simplify your portraits. Now, I'm not telling you to become a minimalist. I'm not suggesting this should be your style. And I do realize that this here is quite a departure from the more naturalistic approach we've been exploring so far. But I am saying that you can train yourself to work with minimalism or even extreme minimalism like we're doing here, where everything is created using just solid blocks of color with almost no blending. And once you are comfortable, then you can add more features if that's what you're aiming for. Once again, I'm using acrylics simply because I am most comfortable with them. And what many people dislike about acrylics, the fast drying time, is actually one of the things that I love most about it. For instance, if I were using watercolors, I would often have to wait at least 10 minutes between layers, depending on how wet the paper is. And with oils, I'd have to be extremely careful, and I would need to plan very well to ensure that the colors wouldn't bleed into each other, okay? Because oils take weeks to dry. But with acrylics, by the time I finish one color, it's practically dry and I can move straight to the next one. Even with a thicker layer, I usually only need to wait about 3 to 5 minutes before continuing. So a portrait like this one can be finished in around 12 minutes only. This time, I am challenging myself to use even fewer colors, just 3. I did consider adding my usual burnt amber for highlights, which I often use to add a bit of dimension. But in the end, I decided to leave it as flat as possible. And even if it is as flat as can be, you can still feel expression. You can still recognize personality, and you can still grasp the moment. Finally, one more thing. You can absolutely play with colors in this style. Here, I kept everything fairly close to natural tones, but you could just as easily use green or, I don't know, purple. Okay, not purple, at least not for me. Personally, I don't like it. I think it reminds me of funerals, actually, and I'm pretty sure you've never seen me using it in my work. But if you like it, go for it. That's totally fine. We all have our preferences, and purple just happens to be not one of mine. Anyway, so this is how you can simplify your portraits down to the bare minimum, okay? Using just blocks of color. And once again, even if it's flat and minimalist in style, you can still show expression, you can still reveal character, and you can still connect with the viewer in a human level, okay? And these are the results of what we've done today. So I hope you've learned something new today and that this inspires you to approach portraiture without any fears. And remember, expression is more important than likeness. As always, keep on practicing and thank you for joining us.